when you're small, you always think growth is the answer. And as you get growth, you get a lot more money, but you get a lot more problems too. People didn't come to Hurricane to live in small lots or whatever. They came to get the open field that they got. The city did this to me. The city did that to me. And the city is us. And so I want to get that feeling out that we are the city. We don't like large government. We don't want mandates. We don't want to put a lot of things in. We purposely don't have an ordinance for that.
Welcome back to the Grindcast. So today we're joined by Clark Fawcett, a lifelong Hurricane resident who served as city manager for nearly 38 years and now sits on the city council. He's also a CPA and trustee on the Washington County Water Conservancy District Board. Clark is running for mayor with a focus on water management, smart growth, and protecting Hurricane's small town feel. Thanks so much, Clark, for coming on. We appreciate you.
I appreciate you having me.
So first off, tell our audience just a little bit about you. So I know you've been a lifelong resident of Hurricane, minus a couple of years that we talked about, but for the most part.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Hurricane and have 4 sisters and 1 brother, but that all still live there in Hurricane.
Wow.
I had the opportunity to go to Dixie College when it was Dixie College for 2 years, and I could do BYU where I got my accounting degree. I came back and worked in St. George for an accounting firm, Carter, Kemp and Adams at the time, for about 2.5 years before I started with the city for Hurricane. Only employment experience I've had is those two jobs. And so I kind of stuck it out there. People tell me sometimes you had to go somewhere else, make a whole lot more money. And it's like, no, I'm being treated good here. And I like the community. It's a good place to live. And so I just kind of hung out, stayed there. So I ran for city council 2 years ago. I didn't know if citizens would still want me after that long or not, but they did, responded well. I got the highest number of votes in both primary and general election on this. So I'm now serving on the city council. So I've enjoyed Hurricane. It's been a great place to live. It's definitely changed a lot since I was in high school. It was 1,500 people or whatever, but it's still a great place to live with good people.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. So you spent your entire life in Hurricane, and of course nearly 38 years as city manager. What's the biggest way you could say that Hurricane has changed in that time, and what lessons do you carry into this race?
Well, obviously, there's been a lot of change in the growth, and so we see a lot of things there that's happened. So much of that area just open. It's spread out an awful lot. One of the things I would like to have seen grow from inside out a lot more, but it seemed like anytime we had it, it was always on the outer ends of the community when you grow. Over the time, some things seem to be more important than others. We spent a lot of time trying to get sidewalk, curb, and gutter through a lot of the areas, and now you see the people that run and walk don't use the sidewalks anyway. And some of the pathways we've put in will better than the sidewalks. Obviously, there's, when you're small, you always think growth is the answer. And as you get growth, you get a lot more money, but you get a lot more problems too.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's the only answer. Obviously, you need to grow on some kind of at least a small percentage basis in order to live. But sometimes we get too caught up in growth, and I kind of feel like that the best part about a Hurricane is the people and the how we get along and whatever. And so that's more what I want to focus on. Obviously, growth's going to come. People have property rights, can't stop that, and that's okay. But I'd like to make sure that we try to keep it so it feels a lot better. I mean, the traffic and the things that are going on now that people don't particularly like, but those come with growth. But hopefully, we can still feel the people enjoy the area that's there and not get to feel like it's a big city.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. Yeah, I have some questions too about growth later that I'd love to ask you. So for right now, though, I want to focus a little bit more on just your history as a CPA. So obviously, as a CPA, you have a good understanding of how budgets work. How would that background shape your approach to the city finances as mayor?
Well, definitely. I always feel like we got to have a balanced budget, which the state requires. But we try to put money aside and try to do that so that we don't have to bond as much. I'm a pay-as-you-go type person if I possibly can, and we've tried to do that in our efforts to do that. I know we're working on a civic center project right now that right now is between police stations, city office, like $38 million between it. And we have 14 that's already saved. And that's the kind of what I started doing, and now I'm going to continue to do. And I like to be able to see that. I think we can do a lot more that way without having to raise taxes as much. And, they're looking at those kind of things and trying to keep those balanced. I feel like I understand them well and can help out in that particular area. So,
Awesome. So with Hurricane being one of the fastest growing areas in Utah, what's one thing you think we should do now to make sure the city isn't overwhelmed 10 years from now?
well, one of the things that we got to look at is the zoning. And everybody wants to make it more dense. And the state's pushed an awful lot that way because they feel like if they get more density, it'll be more affordable, but it's not happening. You get smaller lots and they still build the bigger homes on them, and so you don't get the affordable housing that you need. So as we look at density, I want to concentrate on saying, why do we need to make them more dense? If you're not going to make them more affordable, then why does it? What's the benefit of it? People didn't come to Hurricane to live in small lots or whatever. They came to live in the open field that you got. And so I'd like to be able to keep it that way as much as you can. You need some variety of homes. I'm not going to. I recognize that part of it, but at the same time, I think that we can have at the time we do zone changes, we can push for affordable housing, or we can just say that's the way it is. And some of the people won't come in because it won't be financially viable. And I think that way you can do it. I felt for a long time that we're at a point where we don't have to go seeking growth. And sometimes I felt like we've tried to accommodate growth an awful lot when really we got to look at what are the good projects. Let's do those, not just anything that counts. So,
Got it. You've proposed requiring new developments to provide affordable housing in 15% of the development. So can you explain how this would work and how it would benefit?
well, it's interesting. Now, I proposed that because I didn't feel like we're getting any affordable housing. And I did send that to our city attorney, who said it's not legal. We can't do it. The state won't allow you to require. You can do it on a voluntary basis by saying we'll give you density bonuses if you can do it. Now, we already have apparently that kind of a thing in there. It's not being used. So that's one of the things I want to explore a little bit more, is to make sure we're letting the developers know that that's a possibility out there to get the density bonuses. And what I proposed, I wasn't trying, I don't like mandates, and that kind of was on one, but what I was trying to do was say, if there's 3 lots in your subdivision, it's got to be affordable because it's 15. I'm going to give you 3 more lots. So you're going to get everything you had before, but you're going to give us 3 affordable housing lots are deed restricted. So I was trying to basically incentivize them in order to be able to do that. And I still think we can, in some ways, pushing more of the voluntary nature, as well as if somebody comes in for a zone change and they want to get a higher density, at that point we can say, we're not going to give it to you unless you've got some affordable housing. We did that last week to a project. We were working on one last night, and we were kind of talking about the same thing. So I think you'll see us push a lot more for, if you want higher density, you got to give us some affordable housing. And so I may not quite get what I wanted as far as the ordinance there, but I think we'll continue to pursue that to get more affordable housing.
Got it. You've said that you wanted to protect Hurricane's quality of life over commercialism and keep that small town feel. So what policies would you prioritize to make that?
Well, that's a little bit harder. You can't always mandate, how people are going to be, but I think that as far as making it a little bit more open, trying to make sure we have open space, we have parks that are there, continue to have events and activities that bring people together, and try to get them more people involved. One of the things I'd like to be able to do is to split the city up into several quadrants. May use the precincts that we already have and try to get 3 or 4 people in each one of those to serve as neighborhood committees and be able to have them meet on a regular basis and have the council members assigned to each one of those. They can meet, they can provide us information about what kind of things they need in their area as far as budgeting when it comes to that. If we're doing a major project in those particular areas, we can communicate with the people through that avenue. If we do some bigger things like this civic center that's turned into kind of a little bit of a controversy, we can go out and we can meet with them personally on those. By trying to get more people involved and get it spread out a little bit more, we get the association of people together. And I think that's where I feel like is probably the biggest thing in trying to put, to bring it to a small town, and make sure that everybody's involved and has a say and feels like they do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, sorry. Did you have a question? Oh, okay. Sorry. It sounded like you did. So, okay. You've talked about the proper role of the mayor and government staff. What would be different in how you lead?
Well, I can't say I know exactly how our current mayor is leading, but um, one of the things that she's talked about is how many hours she's there at work, and she does spend an awful lot of hours. My approach has always been more of a delegation. We have city council members; they each have assignments for different departments. We have department heads that are there. I want to spend a little time with each of the department heads and say, what do you like or don't like about what's been going on? What do you feel like should or shouldn't happen with our city council and mayors? I want to be able to find out more what they need. I want to lean more on them and let them take the responsibilities and then be reporting to me so I know what's going on. But I'm going to put it back more on their shoulders than it's on mine. I want to be there anytime somebody wants me to a meeting. I'll be there, but I'm not going to attend every meeting that's out there to be attended. I might get to some of our boards once or twice a year, but I'm going to pretty much lean on them and get them to report to me. And I think we put it back in their hands and let them run it.
Mhm.
Gotcha. Um,
Yeah, sorry, really quick. There's a book, it's called Who Not How, right? And so it's like that's a great way to like focus even for business. I mean, if you think
Yeah.
about it, cities are a business. And so when you lean on the who, I think that that's what makes things run the best is like relying on the people that are there to, really support those roles. So,
I feel like I'm a smart individual and I've got a lot of experience, but I know there's a lot of people out there, probably some of the people in our community that got ways to solve things that we haven't thought of. So I want to pull more on that expertise from citizens as well as our department heads and whatever. It's got to be a group effort. One of the things that you see all the time is people come in and complain. It kind of becomes an us and them. The city did this to me. The city did that to me. And the city is us.
Mhm.
And so I want to get that feeling out that we are the city. And so if you're going to come in and complain, you're complaining against yourself. So let's get together as a whole and try to solve that rather than just complain.
Yeah.
So,
And like my grandma says, many hands make light work.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
well, I like that idea of being willing to work with some of those others. 'Cause, we see that a lot in business, right? Our podcast is mostly about entrepreneurs, and we find sometimes that the owner will try to do too much, right? And it just shows the business rather than leaning on the resources, leaning on the other people, bringing the proper people in to kind of help make those decisions and delegate some of those things. And a lot of times it means the difference between the business succeeding or failing or getting stuck.
yeah. Well, and that's it. That's one of those things. You still need to be on top of things and know what's going on. But I feel like we got good people in there and we need to rely on them and work with them. So,
Yeah. So after serving as city manager for decades, how would you bring fresh ideas while leaning on that experience?
that's funny because, a lot of people say they want change, and they want change. And while I know that we need to change and do things, I wanted to ask a few of those people who have come in the last 5 years and said, we need to get change unknown. So why did you come to Hurricane? Well, we liked what we saw. Well, we didn't do too bad over the last few years. If you're coming here because of that, do we really need a change? And the answer is yes. Obviously, you got to change with what's going on. Different problems comes up and everything else with it. And probably my biggest thing with that still is I want to get out to the public. I want to find out what they want and what they want to see. And that's where the change will happen when things that we see that maybe we're not doing so well at.
Mhm.
I don't know how to get any specific areas right now. Obviously, affordable housing is one of them, and trying to be able to make sure we got connectivity between our communities because we have a lot of separation between those. But I think most of that's going to come from the ideas that people share with us that we need to change. What is it they don't like? If they want to change, what is it they want to change and why?
Mhm.
Um, you know, people always say, well, again, they don't like the saying, adult California, my Utah. And when
Yeah.
people will say that all the time, but sometimes they come here and they want to change something. One of my favorite times as city manager was when somebody would call up and say, "Oh, you got to put an order. You got to get somebody to stop doing this. The neighbors are doing something they didn't particularly like. You got to come out and make them change." And I'm going, "We don't have an ordinance against that." I go, "What?" Where I came from, I'm saying, "Well, we're different here. We don't like large government. We don't want mandates. We don't want to put a lot of things in. We purposely don't have an ordinance for that." And that would usually take them kind of know what to say when you say, well, we didn't want to have an ordinance for that.
that was probably why they came here.
Yeah. And that's a lot of why they came here. And
Yeah.
so we have to get them to stop and think about it. If you came here, then you want it like you had it before, then go back. I mean, it's just that obvious. And there are, I'm not saying that to say that we don't have our problems, we need to fix it. There are, but let's not just change it because they liked the aesthetics. They didn't want somebody putting a tree because they couldn't see Pine Valley, or something like that. That's not something the city controls. It's health, safety, and welfare.
Right.
Let's stick to those particular issues, and let's not get into a state where we have so many laws and orders they can't do things. Let's be free and open and be workable for our neighbor. Let's help them out in cases that we need to and whatever else, and let's all work together. Yes.
So one of the things that I've personally experienced is I've run a business in St. George, and then I also started one in Hurricane, and it was a much different experience. So I wanted to kind of get your thoughts because I was a little bit taken aback by the business setup in Hurricane,
Okay.
simply because like it's it's a little bit kind of an older style. And I feel like when you're setting up a business, it's like if you go to St. George, they have like a list of all the things that you need to do and all the websites to visit and all the things. And then in Hurricane, it was like writing it on a sticky note.
All right.
And then the other thing that was a little bit interesting was, you go through the process, you pay all the fees, and then city council decides whether or not they're going to approve or deny your business. So it's like you've already paid all the things. So is that something that you guys have looked at as far as like streamlining that process or like kind of changing it to make it a little more modern? And
Yeah, I don't know that we've talked an awful lot about it, but it's come up a few times if things there, and we need to take a look at it. The city council doesn't even address businesses at all unless it's if you're coming in, well, even site plan. We don't even address businesses that come in. So they may go to the planning commission, and that may be where you're looking at with it too. But yeah, we do need to have that. I know over the years, I had times when people would say, it was more with developments, they'd come in and say, we came in, we didn't know exactly what we're going to do. They gave us some things, we go out and do them, and they come back and go, oh, now you got to do this. Come back, now you got to do this. And that was always disheartening for people. And we do need to be able to have something that says, here's what you do, here's what you work with, and whatever. And I do believe that's the right way to be with it and have it already written up so you can come in and deal with them. Definitely something I'd like to be able to see. I want to be business friendly.
Yeah.
I want people to be able to feel like they come in and they can know what they're going to do and be able to get to it. People have a right to a piece of property. It's commercial. I'll operate a business. They need to know what they can do and how to do it. Now, if they don't want to do that and they don't want to live to the standards, then we don't not necessarily change for them. There may be some changes that people propose that would be good. We might need to change, but overall, we're not going to change it just because somebody wants to do something else. But they need to know, and if they're willing to do what we require, then it's a done deal. It shouldn't even have to be any more than you fill out the paperwork, you submit it, and you're on your way. And it should be timely as much as you can.
right.
It's sometimes hard to get a business and get it out and get started and running. So
Yeah, and the challenge that I came across was I had to change location. So it's like once I brought my equipment over to the other location, my operation was shut down. And so I had gotten all the permits, everything done, but then I was waiting on the city to just approve, and it took a week. So that was a week of revenue that I wasn't getting. So that was just, it's like you have to think of like these are small businesses. So it's like they rely on that. So it's like if you can streamline that process, it just
well, and that's another thing I'd like to do. And again, I know I can't get out to every business that's in town, but I would like to be able to have, on a basis with a weekly basis or something where I set up an appointment with different businesses and actually go sit down with the owner and say, okay, how are we doing? What experience you have? Come up with some of these kind of things like this because I want to know that they had a problem with it because then we can fix it.
Right.
If we don't know, they may not be able to fix it, and we need to be able to design something that works with the business as well. But that's where I feel like most of our change has got to come is what are we doing and what's wrong and what do we need to fix from there?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if you don't know about it, you can't necessarily fix it.
yeah, and that's where again I want to be us,
Right.
not having to sit back and grouse. I could go out in the community and walk door to door and talk to people, and almost every person you go to is going to have a story.
Yeah.
The city did this to me. The city did that to you. And, some of it's perceived, it's not real, and some of it's real. And I just want to be able to say, if it's out there and it bothers you and there's a problem, come in and talk to us about it. Now, we have 26, 27,000 people in town. We're not going to be able to please everybody. But let's find out what the problems are. Let's try to fix the ones we can. And maybe when it comes down to it, some of the problems you want to have fixed, majority don't want to do it that way. And so we won't. But let's at least find out what they are and work together.
Yeah, if you're aware of it, then you can make a decision on what's best for the city. But if you're not, then it makes it a little tough. We had kind of going along the lines of stuff that the city might not know about. We've had we met with some people and just asked them what concerns they had or what questions that they had. And so one was we met several parents that had kids that were in sports in Hurricane, and so they've raised concerns about not having enough facilities in Hurricane, from not enough soccer fields to baseball fields being converted into softball fields. So some of these kids are joining St. George teams instead of playing here at home. But that may not be an option for some families, whereas, for their finances, it doesn't work out. What can be done to ensure Hurricane kids have the fields and resources they need to keep developing locally? And as a parent with kids who are in sports, it's been just such a big part of their life and their friend group, and they're on a great path because of the sports. And so we hate to see where there's some kids that maybe just don't have that opportunity,
Right.
If that makes sense. And part of it's because of the parks, or not enough resources, but what do you think can be done to help?
Well, that's an interesting question, I guess. I know our current mayor has pushed for the gyms that we've got now. Well, when we have the building finished, we'll have 6 gyms. A lot of that was to be able to get kids to be able to have a place to practice and play volleyball and basketball. That doesn't necessarily take care of the baseball fields and soccer. And it kind of amazes me that question came up, because I see those fields and they're very little used. They're open a lot of times. It may be they have certain periods of time when they need it and everybody uses it at the same time. I don't know, but I see so many of those around that hardly ever used. So it might be just a programming issue more than anything else. I don't know. But again, you have to continue to put investment into those type of things. You can charge impact fees to build parks, and we just need to look at those. And if that's a priority and we feel like there's a need, then we've got to prioritize those as part of our expenditures as we go along. Now, they're not getting any cheaper. Used to could build a baseball field with a couple $100,000 to do it. Now you have $1.5 million or $2 million to build a baseball field. And so it becomes a problem. That's where some of those fields that we have were done as a dual use, and they make it so you can move the mound back and forth to try to use for both, so you can accommodate both.
Yeah.
And that's where some of them, come up with that particular issue with it as well. So again, just have to explore that, but it would make more of a commitment. One of the things we find in Hurricane, and it's a very conservative community, and I know some people have said, well, look at what St. George did. Well, they went out and did a bond for recreation, a general obligation bond, which they did, and they just renewed it not that long ago because they paid everything off and they extended the money. And during my almost 40 years now, we passed one general obligation bond, and we've had 3 or 4 that have been not passed. So it's one of those things that we have to look at. We put together probably 5 or 6 years ago, we were going to do a community center, recreation center. And we went out with a bond. It had a lot of opposition to it. And in fact, even one of our former mayors said, why are we even voting on this? And I said, Mayor, this is America. We like to vote on things. That's what we find out about stuff. And I said, we'll find out if those people are asking me about having a rec center, want it bad enough, and we get enough votes, we're going to do it. If they're not, then we'll talk to them. They won't come and ask me anymore because they know. And that's what happened. And so because of that, we didn't do it. So it's one of those things. If we have those kind of people and they want more fields or whatever, it may take some kind of a bond overall to be able to do it. But there again, majority votes on that. And Hurricane has been a conservative community. They don't vote general obligation bonds for our tax rates go up. And I think it'll take a few more years before that gets to the point where they'll do some of that. But that's where some of the other cities around in the area have extended theirs, as they've done it through some of those bonding opportunities, and it's just not been something Hurricane will do yet. So
So if there were enough people that had an idea or, a desire to expand in certain areas, like what's the best way for them to would it be a petition or how can they get
I don't like petitions myself. I mean, they do provide an opportunity to show you enough people are there, but I've seen too many petitions brought before the city council, and then people standing up the back say, "Take my name off that petition,"
Yeah.
because they felt like that what they were sold was not what they got. So I doubt sometimes if they get the right impression with it. But it does show you evidence of need. To me, come to the city council meeting and talk. And yeah, you might want to gather some people and be able to talk about it. But I have no problem ever going to a vote of people on something. Well, let's try to sort it out first. And if there's a way we can do it without going through that, I'd always take that opportunity, not go to a bond unless they had to. But that's where the majority says, okay, we want to do this. We're going to extend it out there and we're going to take care of it that direction. And so we just need to see the interest first, and we need to see some people willing to put some time and effort into it. I remember years ago, we were doing a sidewalk curb and gutter up to a school, and people said, let's do that volunteer. Let's do a volunteer. And we're trying to put in a sales tax for roads to be able to have some money to do it. And they kept standing up and do that. And finally, the mayor said, one of the guys stood up and said, okay, let's do it volunteer. He said, I think that's a good idea. And he called him by name, said, you're chairman of the committee. Man, he sat down there and I didn't mean me. On me. And they never had another complaint the rest of the meeting. And that's where if people want it bad enough, they got to be willing to put some time and effort into it to be able to help us get there. And again, it's a we. It's not us and them. Don't bring it up and say, you do this, come and help.
Yeah. Now, what would you say is the best way? Do they need to just show up during the council meeting, or do they need to get on the agenda?
Well, there's two possibilities. Obviously, if they've got something concrete and they want to rediscuss it, they need to be on the agenda. We do have an open forum at each one of our council meetings that somebody can bring something up if they want to just suggest it and see where they're going with it. But that's only like a 3 minute time you can come up and talk, and we won't make a decision. We'll just take it under advisement. So if they want to just throw it out there and see, they could do it that direction. But normally I would say, if you want something to be more discussed and you want to kind of get something going, just get on the city council agenda and come in. I love it when the youth come in. Sometimes we'll have kids come in. They don't feel like they have that right to be able to do it. They do. And sometimes they carry a lot of weight. If you get 20 or 30 kids coming in, they'll want to do something and bring it in and suggest. Again, it's us.
Yeah. How would you get on the agenda?
You just have to call the city office and talk to the recorder. Cindy B tags our recorder, and you just call her and talk to her and get on the agenda. It's not that difficult to do, but again, people don't know, then they're maybe not do it. So,
right. Speaking just really quick on the sports. So, as I mentioned, that I know we have some that have gone to St. George, and so that's left some in Hurricane that maybe either don't have the finances, or they're just not quite as good to get to that level, but we still feel like there's a lot of value for them being in sports. So for those watching, there is a nonprofit here in town called Hurricane Kids First. Their mission is to help kids stay in Hurricane by providing the resources they need to play and grow right here at home. If you'd like to support their efforts, you can visit hurricanekidsfirst.com. And I know they've brought in some coaches to kind of help with things like that. And also some of the kids that just their families maybe couldn't afford to it. They've picked up the tab on that. So that's hurricanekidsfirst.com.
I'm glad to know that. I know that we just went through last night for some of our rates on our gyms up there. And one of the things we do, we have a priority. Always our programs, our recreation programs first. And then it's any club teams in Hurricane, they're Hurricane club teams, and we get a cheaper price than others, and they'll have second priority on the use of it. So I know we're trying to do that, or prioritizing those that are at home and whatever else, and then if it's available use, others can come in and use them as well. But we're aware that we want to do that, and we have a number of coaches that are doing working with those teams. But again, we need to know those problems and figure out where we need to do it, and whether it's a priority, and whether it's time of use or whatever else. We just need to be able to work through that.
Yeah. Awareness and communication.
And if it's need for more fields because we do it, we need to be able to get that out there and start to work towards that as well. That's a little longer term solution. You don't solve that overnight, but at least need to know it and get it on our master plan, 5-year plan or whatever.
Right.
So.
Right. And it would make sense for some of the fields. It could be a scheduling thing. During the day, nobody's going to be using them. And then, in the evening, right, from when they get out of school to that, it's like everybody's trying to use them during that time frame. And there's a couple fields that will have lights so they can go a little light.
Yeah, and that's
And
there's a big issue too, because a number of them don't have lights.
Yeah.
I need to have the ones that are there, that do have lights are.
Well, especially in the winter, like as it starts to get
Yeah. Well, and
fall.
the soccer ones are that way. I mean, the only ones where we have lights on are our baseball
Right.
fields. And we got those you can work on them, but any of the soccer fields we have, none of them have lights.
Yeah, and then it's like 5 p.m. Right.
There's the one that we use that's it's behind the high school. It's up a little bit. I can't remember the name of it though. That's the one when my kids use, and they have lights, and that's why their coach says we have to go here because this is the only one that has lights.
Yeah.
And otherwise they've got to go practice in one of the other cities, and then it's like some kids can go and some kids can't. So it's been a challenge there. Moving on to some city issues. You've made water management kind of one of your top campaign priorities. Can you tell us a little bit about what your plan would be there?
Well, a lot of the water management has to do with the Conservancy District, because all the cities, the major cities in the county signed an agreement a few years ago that basically they're going to be the water provider. Each one of us have a certain amount of water rights we had before, and occasionally pick up a little bit more, but the majority of the water is coming from their resources we put together. My biggest issue, obviously, is looking at our community and thinking how big it could be. We'll not have enough water to develop all the properties in Hurricane, unless after 20 years and our conservation reuse is gone, somebody comes up with an idea or something that's, that brings water in here that we don't know about yet, or it becomes feasible to bring it in from northern Utah or Idaho or Oregon or Canada or someplace else. But that's going to be a more expensive type of proposition. So we need to continue to focus on water, and we need to do conservation. I like where the district's going as far as buying back the grass areas and that kind of stuff to get water. And we're working on reuse. I know that the plant that Ash Creek has now below Burken is almost finished, and that will start reuse. And then they'll be working on putting one in instead of the lagoons in Hurricane to be able to do the same thing. So a lot of that water will come from reuse. Probably one of my biggest issues with it is, as I look at the water that's there, we look at the development, we talk about conservation, people say, well, why, if we're going to conserve, why don't we stop building? Because we don't have the water for it. And they don't quite understand how that works. But the issue that I see is we don't account for the use of water until somebody buys a building permit. So if we had 10,000 lots sitting out there right now, they're all developed, we haven't subtracted those from our water use yet.
Got it.
And so my concern is in 20 or 30 years from now, somebody goes out and puts a full big development in, they do 5 lots, and they come in for the 6th one, and they say, okay, we don't have any water anymore. Now what's going to happen? Those people are going to say, well, why didn't you tell me that before I started all this? Now the district has a disclaimer on the bottom. When you say we will serve me water, they say yes, but on the bottom it says if we don't have it, we won't give it to you. But I don't think that's going to be worth it. I really think that we ought to be in a position where we actually look at what we have developed already and subtract it from our water, so that we have some time to come up on it a little bit more than just all of a sudden. But that's not a good thing. My feeling is right now, if we subtracted that, we wouldn't be building anything right now, because we have enough of lots already to use all the water that we're going to have. Now I know that you don't get paid for that until you buy a building permit.
Right.
So I got that issue to deal with, but I just feel like we're kind of pushing it down the road to speak. Yeah, we're planning for water. We're trying to get it all put into development or whatever else with it, and that continues to need to happen. But we need to know if we're going to have run out of water and we still got a whole lot of lots of development that's out there, what's going to happen then?
So are you thinking of looking at or accounting for it when the entitlement process and all that
Is that where it ought to be looked at? I really think it ought to be looked at. Now, whether you actually take action and say we're going to stop it right here, that may not be what you do, but at the same time, you need to be able to monitor it that way, because otherwise, you're going to have a lot of people. I just see a lot of lawsuits coming when people all of a sudden don't have water and they put several $1 million into a development.
Right.
And to me, that is a lawsuit waiting to happen. I won't be alive when that happens. I expect I'll still be here, but it concerns me because I feel like that's something we need to do. We will look at more of that particular thing so we know it's coming, where we're going to be at with that. So
That would make sense. I mean, if you're a developer and you're buying the land, you're going through the process. It takes a while for the entitlement and get your plat map and everything. And so you've got a lot of resources in there. And then if suddenly you can't get a building permit, that land is worthless.
it is. It is.
And you're already out all the money. That would be extremely stressful.
So that's really good foresight. I haven't heard of anybody bring that up yet.
No. And I didn't realize that because I have some developments that I'm part of. And
Hardly anybody's going to know that, even though as I bring up the water district, they say, well, you have a disclaimer on the bottom of it. And I thought, yeah, you do.
does anybody read those?
Well, that's part of it. Nobody's going to read them very much. And then the people that do are going to say, well, every day we walk in and get water and you're just going to have it. But sometime it's not going to be there. Now, my hope is that somewhere on the line we continue to be able to find ways to make the water go further, or we'll be able to get more, bring it in from somewhere else. Obviously, every time you do that, it gets more expensive. You look at the impact fees; they continue to go up, and that's because the resources that we're having to get, not only is the cost of everything gone up, but the ones we're doing now we did the easy ones, the cheap ones. Now we're doing the most expensive ones, and so if we continue wanting to develop here, it's going to cost us more money. That's just the way it is, unfortunately.
Yeah. Is there any plans in Hurricane to add any additional reservoirs? I mean,
No, with
Sand Hollows.
the reservoirs and stuff are all got to be conservation district. They're building the one in Tocqueville, the one in Warner Valley that's going to be built that they're still working on. And Hurricane just finished drilling a well out beyond Sky Ranch. We actually drilled 2 wells. One well that was in the Gould's Wash area, but the water didn't prove up to be culinary grade. We'll run it into our pressurized irrigation system and we'll save some of that water. And then the one out by Sky Ranch is a culinary grade water. And we talked about last night, another person that has a small well out in that area that wants to sell it and has little water rights in it. So we continue to look at those and, drill some more wells. But part of the problem is that aquifer that's out there. The state controls how much water comes out of it, and you can't transfer from one basin to the next. It has to be within that aquifer. And there's some concern that we're overusing that aquifer, which means they've overallocated the amount of water that's there. Now they're doing a study on it, but they don't have enough evidence yet to do it. So it's going to take them 10 or 15 years to get what they're going to get before they do it. But at some point, everybody may have to take a cut on it because it's maybe be overused.
Yeah.
And so we need to look at those kind of things too. And over time, we see it, the drought, we see less and less moisture coming and whatever. And so those are all going to affect those springs and underground and stuff too. We just need to stay on top of it so we just don't dry them up. But again, we'll continue to look at any water rights and sources that are there to be able to develop, but they're small amounts. Those bigger ones are the ones the conservancy district has to do because none of the cities can afford to do those kind of things. But, they only have so much water in the river. And they put it into reservoirs, and they can't continue to build reservoirs unless they got more water rights to put into it. I think the district has done an absolutely wonderful job. When you look at the Virgin River, I drive through places that's got lots bigger rivers than that, and they have water problems, and we're doing so much off of so little because we stored it.
Yeah. Sometimes you see it just trickling.
Yeah.
But then again, it seems, when we have the monsoon come through and there's just tons of water, and I think we just can't that book
Well,
dirty.
Sometimes it is. We went up to the river with my grandkids on Labor Day, and I'd been up there with some church youth not that long ago, and the place we went, it was about a month ago, and it was getting pretty low, and it was a lot better when we went up there because we'd had some storms. But it was a lot more muddy. When it got done, we were all red, all over from the mud was in it, but we had a good time.
Yeah, we need more days like yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, it came down pretty longer. Yeah. So you mentioned about that you like, having businesses come and open in Hurricane. What types of businesses or industries would you like to see more of in Hurricane, and how would you attract those?
Well, that's another. We talked last night. We had a guy come in from the Southern Utah Business Alliance, I think it was, that they're trying to do, and they're trying to help us get things put together because we have never really had an economic development committee or anything in your town. We worked with a bunch of different developments. Obviously, that whole Gateway area was developed during the time I was in. Felt like that was a big push for Hurricane to be able to get those kind of jobs. And first of all, you've got to have property, and we do have some additional property out along SR7, but it's clear out in the south area. Some of the utilities are not there yet, but that's one that's going to be some more industrial. And obviously the industrial is nice because they're usually higher paying jobs. They bring in more jobs. I like to see small businesses. I like to be able to see people to do that. We've had a developer in the fairgrounds industrial has been building just little buildings. So you build a little building, you got a little shop area, you got a little office area, and they've been selling those quite regularly. And it's nice to see those because the small business is still a great thing. So encouraging those, and some of that goes back to, can we put together some things where we can assist people? You know, a lot of times people want to start a business, but how do they do it and where to go? And we put those resources together and give them a list and help them out, and even get some of the people in our community that are retired, you know,
Mhm.
as a CPA, you know, I could say, I'll donate my time to be able to help people get set up their books or anything else with it. But we got a few people who will assist. That helps to get some of those little smaller businesses going. So I like to focus there. Obviously, everybody likes tech businesses because they're high paying jobs and stuff. And that's one of the things you'd like to see. It's just hard to get those in unless you have adequate infrastructure and whatever together. And we're probably not in a position where we can really attract those because of where we're at. Um, most of the stuff you see is commercial that comes along, and that's always hard. And I've suggested a few times, people say, "What do you need, Eric?" And you tell them, and they're going, "Well, I don't know," you know. But it's it's one of those things that I'm not sure who and what at this point. I just know we need to spend more time working at it and try to get it. But you know, to me, it got a little discouraging there for a while. We built a lot of jobs up in that Gateway Industrial Park, and felt real good. We're providing jobs for some of our kids, and then the housing went up so much that those jobs do not pay enough to be able to build a house. And so that got to be a two-pronged type of thing. It doesn't do a lot of good to induce um, a company to come in and pay wages when people can't build a home. Back in those days, they were tickled to death to come in because we had a great labor market. But now, unless they're here already, your labor market's not as good because you can't draw people in unless to come in the house unless you can pay them enough. So they've got to be a pretty good job in order for them to get here. So we have to look at that side of it as well.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and you need the businesses to come because that's just such a big part of revenue for the city. So if they stop coming, it causes a major problem.
Yeah. And of course, the biggest ones for us are always the ones that bring the sales tax.
Mhm.
That's a huge difference in it. When Walmart built their store over there in Harkin, you know, that was a big boost to our economy.
Mm.
I always figured that when Walmart actually got in there, I'd be able to wave my magic wand as a city manager that year and give everybody what they wanted in the budget because we're going to get this big influx. It came during the downturn, so I didn't have that great opportunity to do it, but it sure kept us from having to cut back on more people. And so it really was a good thing there. And so you'd get someone like a Costco or,
Yeah.
you know, some things. I would love to have one of those kind of stores in town because I don't know what it would generate, maybe $2 or $3 million in sales tax. And that goes a long ways to be able to help it. Then some of our people would go to other places to shop because it's not there. And we're getting better. We're getting more of the things that keep people at home. But, you know, those are the kind of things I'd like to see, but you don't it's hard to get them to come. Retail comes when there's enough people there to make a profit. You could buy the piece of property and build them a store, but they still wouldn't come if they can't get the people to come in because they're not going to pencil out. So it's just one of those things that we hope we can sell to some of those businesses. Herpin is a good place because we see businesses that have come and done really well. And so we can now say, okay, maybe it's not such much of a gamble. We got people that are willing to stay at home and shop. So we got to be able to prove that for those.
I think it makes me think of the older the Ace Hardware building that they moved into the newer one too, right? But the old one's sitting there.
Yeah.
vacant and
Well, right now, as far as I can tell, it's designed to be taken down and build a. Well, I think it's going to be a culvert that they're going to put there, but I've heard a couple times before, and then it didn't turn out that way. My brother-in-law's the manager, Ace there, but that was one of the things. They took a big leap to build that bigger building.
Right.
I looked at the parking lot they had before; it was too small, and I thought, how are they going to be able to support this bigger building? Well, they were overwhelmed by how much more it brought business to them when they built that. So that's kind of sometimes a faith you have to have, and I shouldn't say faith. You got to do a little bit of investigation more than faith. Yeah, fair.
But yeah, no, and I think one of the challenges just in Southern Utah in general, like having a retail space, like unfortunately we have tourism spikes and then we have weather spikes and it all affects those things. And so if you're not prepared as a business owner for those swings, like it gets really challenging to keep your doors open. So
Yeah, we had a lot of people always asking, where are we going to get a good restaurant? And there's some good ones there, but they're more mom and pop. They want the Chili's or Olive Garden,
mhm,
the Applebee's is coming out, and those you go to them. We've tried and tried at times to get them to come. They go, you don't come till you got 30,000 people. That's the kind of threshold that we say. Well, we got millions of people driving through, and they say we don't care. We've got to have it year round, so it doesn't. And I'm tickled to death to see Applebee's and that Culver's does
yeah,
is going to come in there. We're starting to get some of those name brands, which means we're now at that level where we can draw them. But beforehand, you couldn't pay them to come.
yeah,
And that's just for that reason. They've got to be able to see it.
Yeah, it makes sense if they're looking at the number of people that live right there, but
Yes.
but we do have so many people that drive through because like the fast food, the Del Taco and all that right there, like those are always
And they're
they
doing
really do really well.
and that's one of the things it does well. Your sit down restaurants is going to take a little bit different
right.
thing.
Sure.
A lot of those tourists going through are probably not going to sit down at those, but at the same time, that can add to it. But they want them year round. They don't want to be, busy for 6 months
Right.
and then not. But granted, Zion's drawing them a lot more, so it's 9 or 10 months now rather than 5 or 6 months it used to be years ago. But yeah, some of those just need bit. And sometimes I've told people, if you want a good restaurant, you got to support them. You'd have a restaurant kind of, and people would go there and eat a couple times, and then they didn't go anymore.
Yep.
And they complain about it, but if you can't support the ones that are there, they won't stay. So
Well, and also like people complain that like they're not open late enough. There's a reason, right? Like
yeah,
people don't go out late, like in general. And so they've found that like if they stay open till 9 or 10, those last 2 hours, they're paying for staff and they'll be
yeah,
there. So I mean it's a problem that citizens just don't understand until they have to run a business.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I like that. If you want good restaurants here, you got to support them.
you got to support them.
And that's what makes it pencil. Otherwise,
Right.
even if they do come, they won't stick around because they can't.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm.
What do you see as the biggest difference between you and Mayor Billings?
Yeah, that's hard to say. I think most of it goes back to what I talked about already was delegation. She spends a lot of time there and talking to the staff and others around. She spends a lot of time and she's a lot of meetings. And she likes being able to do that. She feels like she needs to be there and whatever. And I guess mine is I feel like that if I give someone an assignment, I expect them to do it. She's assigned me on the airport, and she comes to every airport board meeting. So it's like,
If we're both here.
yeah,
Yeah.
why do I need to be there if she's going to be there and take the assignments? And sometimes that's the way some of the staff feels and some of the others feel.
I feel like she's kind of a micromanager.
Yeah, and
Something it is.
and I don't know that she necessarily is, and I don't really want to address that as that direction, but
Okay.
sometimes it feels that way to some of them and whatever either. And so I think that's more of anything. She and I agree on a lot of things. We got a lot of things together on policies and what we want to see and what has to happen. But I think that's probably the biggest thing that I see is that I just feel like we've got good people. We let them do their job, and they still got to be accountable and they got to report to you. But I think we can let more of them take care of that responsibility of staff. And if I assign it to a city council member, I'm not going to take it away. You're going to do the job. If you're not attending the meetings, you're not doing anything, then we'll have a sit down and we'll talk about it. And if there's a problem that they can't make it or do something else because of work assignments or something else, maybe we need to switch things. But it really needs to be them. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
So what would you say like I mean, you've been in obviously you grew up here, you've been in city, management for a long time, like, but what's your biggest why for like being so involved in the city, like starting as a city manager and then now wanting to transition into mayor?
it's interesting because I grew up in a home where my parents never complained about anything. They never got involved in government. They always voted, but they didn't get involved in anything. And I've got brothers and sisters that are the same way. You probably couldn't pay them enough to go be in a city position. And I kind of came into this job a little bit by accident from, when I came in, I shouldn't say accident, but by, it was, it was a downturn in the economy. I was worried about losing my job when I went looking for that particular one, but it's been a great thing. I enjoyed the opportunity to work at home. I enjoyed the opportunity to be able to service the community and be part of it. And when I retired, I used to kid, I wanted, if the city would just pay me my full salary to work half time, I'd stay on for a while, because I wasn't, I didn't like it. I just wanted to do other things as well. And so I still feel like the city paid for training for me for a lot of years. I got a lot of experience that they paid me for during that time. It's time to be able to continue to give back. I'm still young enough. I should be able to be involved in some of those things. And I still feel, because of the number of years I've been in and whatever, overall, I probably know as much about the city as almost any person over there. And so I feel like I should be able to utilize that still to be able to help. And just kind of a civic responsibility. I just enjoy helping and being involved and seeing what's going on. And I don't want to be there when I'm 90, but at the same time,
Still here.
I don't know how long I'm going to do that, but I feel like as long as I've got that and my health is good, my wife's health is good, and I continue to serve. And it's just a motivation. I love the city and want to see it continue to be the city that people want to come.
Yeah.
If you were to win this election, what are the top 3 priorities you would focus on?
Well, affordable housing obviously would be one of them. And I'm not sure exactly what that would entail entirely, but definitely that's one of the things that I'd like to be able to focus on, to get there. The other two is probably a little bit different. I feel like right now the growth is a little bit too fast. The staff doesn't have time to take care of the normal duties that I think they should be part of and whatever. And while I don't necessarily I don't want to go in there and put an artificial thing. It should be running on its own. But I think we look a little bit harder at the developments as they come. Obviously, if somebody comes in and meets all your standards, you're going to do it. That's a property right. And define that. But if there's projects that are a little bit out there on the edge and they got maybe all the utilities are not there, you're not going to focus on those. You're going to have to say, well, services are not there yet. And I think in the past, sometimes we've approved some of those and put a burden on the city to try and extend those services or to meet those when we really don't have the resources or people to be able to do it. And I think we need to focus on that, a little bit more. And traffic's probably the other one. And I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work out either. I know we need some more east-west corridors. Some of it comes to mistakes we made in the past. All of the commercials have been along SR9. And because of that, if you live quite out in the South Fields, you got to come in and go on SR9 to get to anything. And so we put more traffic on there than we need to. In the current study they were doing, they were talking about the traffic in downtown Hurricane, and in the next 10 years, it's going to be where they got to do something else again. Well, they just did that. This way, it was just yesterday that they did the widening. They got to like the widening. They're going to provide another alternative. If we could do a little bit more commercial push out to other places, so everybody didn't have to go down on SR9, we could take a lot of the local traffic off. That may be one of the solutions as well. But I think that's one of the things that people dislike the most. The thing we got to do is we got to push for that we worked with the state roads years ago to make it so that from 2600 West, the light that's there on out to the freeway is going to be a limited access. So the only accesses you'll get is where the stoplights are right now. And what they will do is they'll come in and put overpasses on every one of those. And so it'd be just like a freeway going from there, and so your traffic will move a lot faster and it'll stay that direction. I think they thought it was down the road a long ways, but if you drive back and forth, especially you come from St. George back about 5 or 6 o'clock, so some of those things you can line up at 3400 West and be almost to the bridge. You can be the one there at the fairgrounds and be up at the top of the hill, because that's how much they're backing up now. And I think we need to push them to say, we got to accelerate this and get those overpasses and stuff going in so the traffic will flow.
Yeah.
So that's another one I think that we need to work on, is that and the conditions of the roads and, look at the flow.
I've heard about one going in over there, and then in the future, one going in probably around where Walmart is. But I don't know if that's the case now. Sand Hollow, where it turns over to Sand Hollow Road, the intersection there.
Well, but there's the one that has there's freeway light there at Walmart when you do it, and the road will extend out there. They're already working on that development out there, and it will extend on across from there, which will help pull it up. But still, it's going to be the traffic on there. And one of the things that will happen is in that area there around Dixie Springs, the Elam Valley project, is more commercial, but we hope it's back far enough that it'll help pull some of the ones from Dixie Springs and Sand Hollow into those. They don't have to drive back into the town. Obviously, you don't want to run your businesses in town out either, but at the same time, they'll still have to go to Ace, or they'll have to go to someplace else. But hopefully, there's some traffic that gets pulled off of them. Because right now, you get to any commercial, you got to be on there. You live out 3,000 south, you could go on out on SR7, but if you didn't plan in advance, you got to get some gas. You're going to be back on SR9 getting gas, and then you're not going to go back to 7.
Right.
You know, you may go a different direction. So let's utilize some more of those other roads by providing more access and more commercial activity.
Right. And then, whenever there's like Trail Hero or Holiday trying to get on, on the Sand Hollow, that sucker's bikes goes pretty far. So if you live there, you're just like, what the?
Well, it's one of those things that's always interesting. You know, I looked at the campaign that the city of Utah did for the Big Five a few years ago. I said it got to be the best advertising campaign you ever did, but it was almost too good because we got so many people up there. And you go up to Zion now, and I feel like I'm on the LA freeway and try to walk up the path. I mean, it's just that's the way it is. And I think we're same way in Sand Hollow. Where you got a lot of good events that come, a lot of good people, but get to those, you just say, I'm staying away.
Right.
I'm not going out there because it's not a place I want to be right now.
Yeah, the gas station becomes a problem. So I live in Neosha Springs, and we've always wanted a gas station like right there.
Well, I still thought they were going to do one. I thought they were going to get one right on Dixie Springs Drive and this R9 right there on all those corners. I kept thinking they were going to put one there. It seemed like it'd be a great opportunity to have it because you got all the lake, people, and you got a lot of the people out there that would be able to service it and stuff too. Because there again, if you could hit that and then go on to 7, and if you do it right, but most of us sometimes, a lot of us don't plan as well as we should, and then get up and ready to go somewhere, and now you got to go back on the SR9 to get things, and that's just something to fix. So
I have a razor. I go out and ride the sand dunes occasionally, and then sometimes you jump in. I'm like, oh shoot, I don't have any gas.
Yeah,
we got to drive this way first.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna.
What happens all the time?
There's a gas station right there. I'd probably go there every day to get gas on the way up. All the neighbors were saying that same thing.
Yeah. Or like I said, if you get some more, they've talked about a bunch of different businesses they're working with. I don't know if there's any real solid thing to them, like Home Depot and Smith's and stuff in that Eden Valley area with that projects they've got there. And if they did some of those, then you wouldn't have to maybe go to Walmart or go to Lynn's or something else. And not that I want to take any business away from them, but we just need to have more localized, and we need to have more options. So
yeah, for sure. Okay, last question. For voters who are watching this who are kind of undecided, can you give a kind of a 1-minute pitch on why you're the best for the job?
Well, I really just go back to my experience and expertise. I've had a lot of training, a lot of years, and I know some of the mistakes we've made. I know some of the things that have been good. I'm willing to listen. I want to get out. I want to get the people's. Now listen, I want to set up a time that I'm in my office is strictly for citizens to come in and speak to me, and I'll set it aside and be there. I want to have that interaction with the people, and so I think that if we can listen to them and take their views in mind and get more people involved, I think that's the way that we'll solve some of our problems.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate you. We had a good time. And for the viewers, thanks so much for tuning into this special episode of the Grindcast. To see the other interviews, head to southernutahvote.com. Special thanks to all our sponsors for their help in making this happen. And if you want to learn more about the Grindcast, please be sure to like and subscribe. We interview entrepreneurs about how they got their start and their step-by-step path to success.